And we're going to talk now about the Victorian state budget in the context of our listeners also in South Australia and New South Wales, and whether regions miss out when it comes to state budgets and their spending by your state governments. And I've got a couple of comments I just wanted to play for you. The first of them is from the Victorian Farmers Federation's Emma Germano. As you listen to these, if you're from another state, just listen to the sentiments here when it comes to people in regional areas and the expectations from their budgets.
We've got a state that's running out of money. We know that they need to plug the holes from somewhere, and they probably need to give themselves enough runway so that a pre-election budget next year feels like Christmas to everybody. So at the moment, we're thinking it's a little bit light on.
So that was Emma Germano from the Victorian Farmers Federation. She's the president of that organisation, commenting on the budget being a bit light on for the regions. And the second comment I've got is from the leader of the Nationals in Victoria, Peter Walsh, and what his party has done in analysis of the budget overnight, what it means over the long term for regional Victorians.
On the work that we did on the budget yesterday, if you look at the capital spend on projects, metro versus regions, and you exclude Geelong out of that, there's only about 8% of the budget over those years going into the regions, and the rest is going into Melbourne.
So is there a bit of rubbery figures or a bit of funny talk when they talk regional? They're throwing Geelong and perhaps some other big centres in there and not looking at those outlying towns and smaller communities.
Well, regional Victoria is all of Victoria, in my view. It's not just a few of the major regional cities, and that's where the Andrews Labor government, I think, loses sight of what makes up regional Victoria. But the majority of the big projects are in Melbourne, and with the huge cost overruns, as we've just talked about, that is just sucking money out of regional Victoria.
Just as an example of the cost overruns and what the impact is on regional communities, in the interview I did with Peter Walsh earlier this morning, which will be on the Flow News 24 podcast channel for you to listen to very soon, the regional rail system in Victoria, which is probably one of the better rail systems in the nation within a state in terms of delivering passenger rail services into the regions, there was money committed to those regional rail services. That's been yanked under this budget in what Mr Walsh called skullduggery to help pay for the overruns of costs in the metropolitan area. This is an all too common refrain from regional voters, regional residents across the Flow family, whether you're in New South Wales and you're concerned about how all the spending seems to find its way into Sydney and the metropolitan centres of that greater Western Sydney area, or whether you're in South Australia and everything seems to be governed from Jepp's Cross to the toll gate, as they call it in SA, and not much gets spent in the regions, and if it does, it's in those large regional cities relative to the smaller country towns. What I find amazing is that you have electorates where local MPs are elected to represent local people, and those electorates contain towns and even smaller scale cities that need representation when it comes to state budgets. And it's pleasing to see the Victorian Nationals doing that analysis and saying they want to stand up for all regional Victorians, and it would be refreshing if we had more MPs in each regional electorate standing up for their electorate and saying where the budgets fall short. And I have to say, when you've got a party that's in government, often you have to roll in with the metropolitan MPs and not be critical of your state budget and even go out there trying to claim it's a good budget for the regions when clearly it's not. It'd be great to see more local members in regional areas criticising even their own government's budget when it's not actually delivering for the regions.